In the first season of Russian Doll, Nadia Volvikov, Natasha Lyon, the brash and undeniably New Yorker protagonist of the series, was stuck in a time loop in which every time she dies, she returns to the same bathroom in her friend's apartment on her 36th birthday. In season 2, Nadia, approaching her 40th birthday, finds herself traveling back in time whenever she takes the 6 trains from 77th Street. Initially, she is troubled, confounded, and exasperated, realizing that she is once more on the receiving end of the universe's bizarre sense of humor. But then, she decides to make the best use of it and change her past so that her future would be better. That inevitably has certain consequences, including the collapse of time. Here is everything you need to know about the ending of Russian Doll Season 2. It's been over 3 years since Nadia and Alan, Charlie Barnett, were trapped in the time loop. Since then, they have spent Nadia's birthdays on high alert so that they wouldn't trigger the circle of the deaths and mirrors once more. 10 days before her 40th birthday, Nadia visits Ruth, Elizabeth Ashley, at a clinic after the latter is involved in a fender bender. In the evening, she calls Maxine, Greta Lee, while heading toward the latter's apartment. The first thing that Maxine says to her involves human embryos in the stage where they have slits in their necks like fish. Nadia takes the 6 train from 77th Street, and when she reaches Astor Place, it's 1982. Nadia meets a very unscrupulous character named Shayer Cesar Carrera, Charlton Copley, and it seems that he knows her. When she stands in front of a mirror, realization dawns. She is inhabiting her mother's mind and body, while the latter is heavily pregnant. The time loops were bad enough. This takes things to a whole new level, especially with the insurmountable issues that Nadia has with her mother. After overcoming her initial shock, she realizes that she has traveled back to the day her mother stole the Krugerrands from her grandmother, Vera. After World War II, Vera got 150 Krugerrands in exchange for the remnants of the family valuables. The gold coins were meant to go toward Nadia's college fund, but she was left with only one of them, which she now wears around her neck. Nadia realizes that she can repeatedly travel back to 1982 and tries to rewrite the history by ensuring that the Krugerrands remain in the family. But no matter what she does, how much she changes history, the timeline readjusts, and the family loses the Krugerrands every time. One time, she falls asleep and misses her stop, ending up in Budapest, Hungary, in 1944 in the mind and body of her grandmother. She tries to secure the original heirlooms for her family, but the timeline readjusts, and it's the Krugerrands again. Meanwhile, Alan has grown deeply unsatisfied with how his life has turned out. He learns about the 6 trains time travel from Nadia and decides to give it a try, ending up in 1962 East Germany, where he develops a romantic interest in his grandmother Agnes's, Carolyn Michelle Smith, boyfriend, Lenny. In the season 2 finale, titled Matryoshka, Nadia causes time to collapse after she gives birth to herself in a 6 train station and flees to the future with her infant self. Both she and Alan discover that they are at the same 36th birthday party that they spent a lifetime trying to escape. Does Nadia change her future? Do Nadia and Alan stop time from collapsing? The existential crisis was at the center of the narrative in the first season of Russian Doll. In season 2, the focus is shifted to family. Nadia literally gets to occupy the mind and body of both Nora, Chloe Sevigny, and Vera and witnesses their circumstances firsthand. In the first season, we get the impression that Nora is mentally unwell, though the type of disorder is never really specified. She buys a car full of melons, steals family heirlooms, does drugs, and forces Nadia to be the subject of many of her outbursts. It is Nadia's greatest fear that she will become similarly unwell. And yet, Nadia inadvertently replicates her mother's behavior. She drinks, smokes, and has eggs with hot sauce for breakfast. In the first season, it is heavily implied that Nora committed suicide after losing her daughter's custody. In season 2, Nadia gets to inhabit the erratic mind of her mother and starts to really understand the other woman for the first time. Vera isn't an easy mother to live with. Her life has understandably been shaped by the horrors she experienced during the Holocaust, and that has created a fundamental disconnect between her and Nora, who was born and grew up in New York City. While trying and failing to regain familial wealth, Nadia realizes that her mother didn't have a perfect childhood either. All three women are the products of their upbringings and youth. Vera, who has lost almost everything, desperately wants to hold on to the only connection she now has with her family, the Krugerrands. One of Nora's reasons to steal the Krugerrands is that this is the best way she knows how to rebel against her mother. As for Nadia, she seeks a better life for herself. Eventually, this leads her to take her infant self to the future so she can give herself a blank slate, a new beginning, and causes the collapse of time and space. Eventually, she comes to terms with her past and present. When she finds herself in the void, or the empty pocket of space left over from a job never completed, she has to choose between herself and the Krugerrands, and she chooses the former. Nadia ultimately returns her infant self to her mother, reuniting with Nora, closing the loop that she has created, and finally freeing herself from all the what-ifs that have plagued her mind for all these years. Does Ruth die? Yes, Ruth dies in the second season of Russian Doll. Ruth has been the sole mother figure in Nadia's life, the one that actually devoted herself to Nadia's well-being. When Nadia travels to 1982, she meets Ruth's younger version, Annie Murphy, who has recently lost her husband. Despite the snide remarks of her being an outsider and a widow from Vera and Vera's friend Delia, Ruth remains steadfast in her support of Nora, while the latter is pregnant. As we see in Season 1, in the years to come, Ruth turns from a supportive friend to a concerned second mother for Nadia as Nora becomes progressively volatile. When Nadia discovers Ruth has died due to pulmonary embolism, she becomes inconsolable. Being trapped in the time loop of her own creation, she missed the death of the only woman who had been there for her since the beginning. After finding a way, she reaches Astor Place in 2022 and heads straight to Maxine's apartment, where Ruth's wake is being held. Does Alan save Lenny? Alan's journey in both seasons happens concurrently with that of Nadia's. In Season 1, they eventually end up in the same timeline with their memories intact. While they are free from the time loop, it's the same memories that hold Alan prisoner. He still vividly remembers that he killed himself. His apparent depression and struggle with life have become too big of a burden to bear. So, when he is offered to live in a drastically different way, he eagerly takes it. He inhabits the body and mind of his grandmother Agnes, a Ghanaian student in East Germany in 1962, and develops feelings for her boyfriend at the time, Lenny. Alan discovers that Lenny and his friends are trying to escape to West Germany through a tunnel. Knowing that the tunnel will collapse, he tries to stop them, but they leave anyway. He never gets to know whether they survived or not. When he finally meets Agnes in the void, he discovers that she never found out either. Agnes helps her grandson find his true worth before helping him get out of the void. When Nadia reaches Ruth's wake, Alan is already there, looking happy and self-assured. What is the Nazi gold train? According to Vera, the Nazis took her familial wealth, most of which was in gold, and put it on the gold train. The gold then reappeared in the form of the 150 Krugerrands. Nadia can't help but reflect on the irony that the family lost its wealth twice on a train. While in 1982, she finds money and documents hidden behind the photo frames at her family's home, as if Vera is always prepared to leave if circumstances demand. After returning to 2022, she opens the frame of one of her mother's photos and finds a receipt of everything the Nazis took from her great-grandfather, Vera's father. Nadia tries to go back to 1982, but she falls asleep on the train. When she wakes up, she is in Budapest, Hungary, in 1944, inhabiting the body and mind of her grandmother. She has failed to keep the Krugerrands from being lost. This gives Nadia a chance to save the original family wealth. From the younger version of Vera's friend Delia, she learns that all the valuables taken from the Jewish people are kept at a warehouse. Believing that they will be soon transported via the gold train, Nadia goes to retrieve them. Because Vera wears widow's attire and has blonde hair and blue eyes, Nadia gets easy access to the warehouse, where valuables belonging to Jewish families are being sold in an obscene attempt to erase the history and culture of an entire group of people. Although she manages to get her own family's gold and transfer it back to her family, the timeline readjusts, and the gold ends up being the reason why her family got the Krugerrands. Does Nadia go back to 1982? Episode 7 of Russian Doll Season 2 begins with Alan incredulous over what Nadia has done. He points out that she's collapsed time to the point that they're back where they started from. They're stuck, with Alan angry and annoyed that, while he's followed the rules of the train, she's succeeded in doing no such thing, collapsing time and causing absolute havoc for them all. Alan believes that they need to take baby Nadia back, while Nadia is optimistic and believes that they should explore all their options. With all the people around them collapsing into pure chaos, Alan urges Nadia not to be so selfish and head back. Out on the stairwell, a whole army of Ruthies begin heading up the stairwell. This is the point that Nadia realizes what she's done, as she's stuck in this loop, and everything is just going to spiral into an existential crisis that she may not be able to escape. Eventually, Alan convinces her to head back to the 80s and bring the baby back. Only, there's another problem. What happens with Horse? Why has the train stopped? Down on the subway station, the train doesn't show up. When they notice a worker in the distance, Alan and Nadia follow him, only to find out it's actually Horse. The train 6622 is the one Nadia is after, and apparently it's at the end of the line. After handing over some money to a grateful and opportunistic Horse, they make it aboard her train. It's the right model, but for some reason the train has been stopped for 30 minutes now. Everybody aboard this train are heading off to Ruth's funeral. It's April 30th, and Nadia is shocked that time has passed. Grief doesn't move you in a straight line, Lizzie says, but realizing that Ruth is going to die alone is enough for Nadia to head off the train carriage and try to make sense of what's happening. Interestingly, the train starts moving again when she walks with Alan. It would appear that the train stopping is more to do with Nadia, allowing her to catch up with events that have currently occurred with Ruth's death. Anyway, Alan tries to convince Nadia not to let grief consume her, bringing up his own journey about trying and failing to save Lenny from his fate in Berlin. Funnily enough, Nadia uses that Coney Island metaphor Shay originally told her, but as they both confront their own fates, we are given a similar split-screen experience to Season 1, when a train fast approaches and appears to hit them both. How do Alan and Nadia escape the void? Nadia and Alan find themselves thrown out of their respective timelines and into a place called the void, a sort of gateway between life and death. Their watches aren't working and Nadia, plus her baby self, are stuck. Alan is also stuck too, and he ends up speaking to his own grandmother, who appears and offers him some encouraging words to take forward with him. Agnes points out that she helped Lenny escape. She encourages Alan to find happiness himself and stop living in fear. Agnes tells him to follow the blue light and make his way out of this perpetual limbo. Meanwhile, Nadia is given a choice between the bag of gold or baby Nadia and the future of time itself. Tough choice. Anyway, Nadia eventually realizes what's really important as she finds herself on the train carriage once more. All the family are there, in various stages of their lives, as Nora sits and talks to her daughter about fate. In Nadia's version of the void, she's asked about her own family and whether she'd choose them if she had the choice. Looking around at the other family members, Nadia makes her choice and decides that yes, she absolutely would. After handing over baby Nadia, our protagonist finds the lights flicker and frazzle, eventually coming back on as she finds herself back in 2022. Horse is there, briefly, and after looking at Nadia outside in the street, heads off skipping into the night laughing. How does Russian Doll Season 2 end? Nadia makes it to Maxine and Lizzie's place, where a crowd have gathered for Ruthie's wake. A beautiful montage is playing up from the projector, while Alan is there too. Nadia and Alan give each other a knowing glance. For Nadia, she heads into the bathroom and finds herself back where she started at Season 1, only this time with far more understanding and appreciation for her family. So Russian Doll bows out this messy and somewhat turbulent season with a fitting conclusion and a nice way of tying everything together. Sure, it comes at the expense of some contrivances involving the train and a bit of uncertainty over how this time-traveling train actually works, but it's a satisfying watch, and the mix of sci-fi, drama and comedy makes for another decent watch all the same. Seeing Nadia faced with all those dead versions of herself was a really nice way of contextualizing the first season's time loop, although I must confess I thought they'd tie that into this season a bit more. However, the main theme here is family, and for that, Russian Doll does a good job with Nadia's storyline. Alan, though? Not so much. Alan's story almost feels like an afterthought here, rather than a genuinely important piece of the puzzle. We were never really told about the rules of the train early on either, and how Nadia ended up in Budapest is a bit of a stretch too. I guess Alan's reveal that they've leveled up seems to ring true. Beyond that though, season 2 of Russian Doll doesn't quite have that same spark the first season had in abundance, but it's a compelling watch all the same. It also leaves the door open for a potential third season, should Netflix decide to renew this one. For now, I guess we'll have to wait and see what the future has in store for our characters. Is Russian Doll Season 3 happening? As of the second season's release on April 20th, Netflix has not renewed or cancelled Russian Doll. Being so, Season 3 remains a possibility. The likelihood of another season will depend on the show's performance within its first 28 days of streaming on Netflix. Considering where Season 2 leaves off, Russian Doll could either end or open the story back up for another time journey for Nadia. Since the series is a fan and critical favorite, that leans in its favorite for at least one more season, which could then be its final season. Who could be in Russian Doll Season 3? Obviously, we would expect Natasha Lyonne to once again reprise her leading role as Nadia, as well as her two on-screen besties Charlie Barnett and Greta Lee as Alan and Maxine respectively. Since it's unclear what a follow-up season would be about, it's difficult to predict which recurring cast members from Season 2 would, or even could return. Until we know what time-bending story Season 3 has in store for Nadia's world, we can't predict who would star in Season 3. Stay tuned for more Russian Doll Season 3 news and updates from Netflix Loving.